Welcome to Fandom Fighters, Episode 4. I am Fern, and I am here with Toby once again.
Yeah, it's going to be me and you, and I think the next episode we might have a guest, but don't quote me on that. And generally, just behind the scenes, a little look at this. We do record in order and release in order. We don't do like a batch of like, here's all these different topics. It's serial recorded and published, so just because that's how I have to do things with my ADHD. If I don't do it in order, I will forget, and we'll have lost episodes that no one will ever see.
Yes. Which might add to our mysterious lore, but wouldn't be good for...
I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I have enough mysterious lore going on in the D&D podcast.
That's true.
Which it has a name, but people aren't going to get it until we put some stuff out. Morningwood Presents is our other podcast that we're working on, is a D&D one. This season is called Born in Shadows. Check it out, also on Acast. Let's get into talking about fandom stuff, though.
Yes, so today's topic is one that I am pretty well versed on, and it is book Twitter.
Excellent.
So today's topic is book Twitter. I am pretty active in at least following a lot of big book Twitter community people. I follow a lot of authors. I follow a lot of booktubers. It's pretty interesting. There's a whole split in the book community. So you've got the authors, and you've got like the YA authors and the not YA authors. Then you've got the booktubers that have book YouTube channels. Then you've got the bookstagrammers. And then there's the weird land of like Facebook book groups. And every single one draws like a different type of person. And just because I like social media and I like analyzing communities, I'm in all of them basically. I have a bookstagram, actually. I'm going to shamelessly plug my bookstagram. It's Margins and Meadows, and I'll put a link in our description if you want to follow that.
Excellent. I didn't know that. It's a revelation to me.
Yes, I don't keep up with it very well because my reading is so sporadic, but I do take pictures of books and I make aesthetic boards for them.
I follow two authors. One is an author for visual novel games.
Cool.
Their most recent one is Arcade Spirits, which is a really good queer representation visual novel romance game. And the other one is a wonderful author, Sue Burke, and she wrote a series of books which are called Semiosis. I think Semiosis is the first one, and Interference is the second one. And I'll talk about her a little bit because like I don't talk about book stuff a lot. I listen to a lot of audiobooks.
Love audiobooks.
I can't sit down and we have ADHD. I can't sit down and read anymore.
Right.
If I do that, I get bored. Even though I'm reading something that I like, I'll get bored reading because I'm not getting stimulus enough. Stimulus? I'm not getting stimulated enough. So I have to like listen. I listen to a lot of audiobooks while I'm at work. And Semiosis, it's another shameless plug of somebody else, and I will never accept any money from Sue Burke. But it's a very cool sci-fi story about a plant that's alive.
Ooh.
And it's super interesting, and I highly recommend it. I'll drop the link here. So go check out in the description, semiosispacks.com. You'll probably never be able to spell it unless you look at the link that we're going to put in the description. But it's very good.
Gonna put that book on my TBR, also known as my to be read.
Yes, it's on Audible. That's where I listened to it, and it's so good. It covers a lot of very interesting science fiction topics.
Love the sci-fi. Need to get more into sci-fi.
Also, another shameless plug. Check out Babaverse. That's just for you, Fern. Babaverse is very good on Audible.
I will.
Very good. That's more popular, so I'm not gonna plug it at all.
Cool.
Just look it up.
It's funny, I haven't heard of any of these, which usually I have.
That's the thing about creative fields is that there's so many things that come out.
So much.
And I'll talk about some of the weird stuff that I've seen on Audible later on in the episode. Because there is a lot of strange things.
That's so true.
There are a lot of very weird books on Audible.
I've been advertised some strange Audible originals.
I bet you that my Audibles are weirder than yours.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm sure. Mine are just like weird fake fan fiction audiobooks that somehow got published.
Yeah. Mine are a lot weirder than that. So, book Twitter is the modern day like fan fiction. Outside of Archive of Our Own and any other fan fiction stuff, a lot of stuff happens on Twitter, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I feel like there's a new, you know how there's a main character of Twitter almost every day and you never want to be the Twitter main character?
Yes, I know exactly what you mean.
I feel like there's a new main character on book Twitter every day, and it's sometimes the same Twitter main character and sometimes it's a different one. There's just all kinds of debate on book Twitter. Most of it I don't want to cover because it deals with like racism and homophobia, and that's just not really what we're about on this podcast. I just don't want to bring everybody down. However, some of it gets pretty goofy, especially young adult book Twitter. I don't know what it is that draws in these bizarre stories, but anybody who has been on YA book Twitter at all will probably have heard about at least one of these.
It's such a weird thing because it's that intersection of adults and children.
Yes.
And that's where you're always gonna run into some weird shit, and especially with like the Harry Potter fans. You can see now how weird people are, like looking back at the Snape Wives episode.
Yeah.
Which was less Snape Wives and more chaos, but we'll leave that as it is.
One thing about YA book Twitter is these people are pretty educated. The authors especially, they know about how to interact with teens online, what is and isn't appropriate. And the fans of YA book Twitter, who aren't always teens, there are people my age, I'm 27, who still read young adult, which there's nothing wrong with that. As much as some people will try to say. So there's a lot of like queer people in the YA book community. There's a lot of representation in the books, and so the people who want to see that are really drawn to the community. So there's a lot of really good discussion that goes on YA book Twitter. I've learned a lot through participating in and watching these discussions happen. But there's a lot of dumb shit that happens too, and that's what we're going to be focusing on.
Excellent.
So our first story has to do with somebody that you book Twitter and book fans may know, and then somebody who the general population will probably know. So we're talking about Maggie Stiefvater and Halsey.
Okay, I know Halsey. I also know what otters are, and I've heard the name. We have a friend named Maggie, so I know that name.
We do. And that Maggie probably knows about this Maggie, because that Maggie is a book fan. So shout out to all the Maggies.
I've only met one bad Maggie in my life. So I've met quite a few Maggies now that I think about it, but there's only the one bad Maggie. So generally good name.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like there is they have done studies about people acting like their name, and like what you're named does sort of influence the way you behave a little bit, and it does sort of influence the way people perceive you.
Yeah, it does. I think about that a lot actually, because like as a baby, when you hear the different sounds, it changes the way your brain develops. It's very interesting.
I could go way off topic about language, but I will not. I'll keep it on topic.
Yeah, well, let's not. Let's keep it on this weirdo topic.
Yeah. So Maggie Stiefvater is the author of a very popular young adult series called The Raven Cycle, which was published, I want to say, in the early 2010s. And the last book came out like a couple of years ago. But she also wrote those werewolf books from the early 2000s. I think the first one was called Shiver, and the cover has trees, like the silhouette of trees on it. So I knew about her because I'd seen that cover. I think maybe I'd read the werewolf book.
I don't know. I don't know any of these. The first thing you said, the Raven Cycle, I just imagined like a cool bird on a motorcycle.
Which is really funny because that's a little bit what it is.
Okay, that's good. I like that. I
Yeah.
like that. Okay.
It's more like teen boys driving cool cars, but there is a lot of Raven imagery.
Oh my
Yeah.
god. Speaking of cars, have you? There's a series with Zachary Quinto. Um, I think it's called Nosferatu. Hold on, what's that called?
Oh, did Joe Hill write that?
Quinto Nos. Yeah, it's like Nos 4A2.
Yeah, that's a book that Stephen King's son wrote.
Really? That's I didn't know it was Stephen King's son. It's a best-selling novel. I've watched a few episodes of it. They I don't want to spoil anything, but they go to Santa's workshop and there's evil elves or something.
Oh.
And there's a car that sucks life out, but some people can go. I don't know. It's crazy. It's an insane story that I gave too much of a hard time to, and it got me into some trouble with my old roommates because
That's funny.
I was being a little too heated about how weird it was. But it's a very odd concept that probably is very well executed, and I just gave it too hard a time. And I just want to apologize to Zachary Quinto personally. Sorry, Zach.
I have such a crush on Zachary Quinto, so I will watch that.
Ever since I saw him eating brains in Heroes, I've always liked him.
I first watched him in the new Star Trek movies, and him as
Really?
Spock just was weirdly hot to me.
Yeah, he's a very good Spock.
Yeah.
I don't actually think about it now. I think that he did not eat the brains of the other
Oh.
heroes. I'm pretty sure he just studied the connections their brains had, and
Oh.
everybody thought he ate the brains because he took them with him or threw them away or something. I think that was a joke
That's
in the
not
show
something you
too.
want somebody to.
You still don't want somebody to scoop your brain out to steal your powers. I get it.
Yeah.
Heroes is a good show. Dead before its time. Rest in
Oh,
peace.
yeah. Fuck, I totally forgot about that show. Anyway, oh yeah, this is important. Cars feature heavily in the Raven Cycle books. I think Maggie Stiefvater herself is like a car enthusiast. She actually lives in the same state as me, and so I went to a book signing of hers, and she had people sign something to go over her fancy car, which was interesting. And so in the book, one of them, there's a somewhat romantic scene between two characters where they go for a drive together in his fancy car. So a bunch of fans pointed out to Maggie Stiefvater, who's very active on the internet and interacts with her fans a lot. She had a Tumblr where people would interact with her, and now she's on Twitter. They pointed out that the Halsey song Drive really fit the characters and fit this one scene.
This is a very interesting phenomenon. Like, it reminds me of one that I'll talk about in a second, but I want to hear where this goes.
So people tweeted at Maggie that Halsey's song Drive fit these two characters and specifically this scene really well. They were like, oh, I put this song on my playlist for these characters. And Maggie decides to respond, not to a specific person, but she just responds to this concept. She tweets, it's not a Camaro she's talking about driving, okay? It's just when Halsey sings, my hands wrapped around your stick shift, she does not, mean a, it's not, you're a writer, Stiefvater, try, use your words. Man, how do I put this in a Twitter appropriate way? I have 5 more messages telling me Halsey's Drive is clearly based on a specific Blue and Gansey scene because it describes it exactly. Guys, don't you have don't you people have mothers to tell you these things? Why do I have to explain this? I know there are 8 words that seem relevant to Blue. The words are, would it really kill you if we kissed? But I assure you, in context, it's hyperbole. She's referring to driving a different model entirely, if you get my drift.
Okay.
Then she says, to be fair, you must now all go ask Halsey if she's heard of Maggie Stiefvater. Wait, that's a joke. Don't torment Halsey until she twitches at my name, regardless of how she feels about my books.
Okay. So I thought this was something else when you got into it. I thought maybe there's this it's this weird effect or sensation called
Hmm.
cryptomnesia, which occurs when a forgotten memory returns without it being recognized as such by the subject, who believes it is something new and original.
Interesting.
Well, I thought the song came first, and the song fit the scene very well. So like maybe she accidentally like plagiarized from a song the scene.
Right.
But it could also go the other way, where maybe like Halsey had seen this scene or something. You know, it's that's just remind me of the effect of cryptomnesia, which happens to me a lot.
Yeah, and I feel like people argue that like comedians will steal jokes, and then it's like, oh, I just nothing is really original. I probably heard that joke and then thought it was my own.
Yeah, yeah, it happens a lot in the comedic circles. There are some people who are absolutely plagiarizers.
Oh yeah.
There are some things where like a good joke is a good joke. That's
Yeah.
the end of it.
So I think what fans were saying was that they thought that maybe Halsey had read the Raven Cycle and then wrote this song based on the book. And Maggie was like, not only is that probably false, but also this song has a sexual connotation that you guys, I don't think, are picking up on, and my characters aren't, having sex in the books.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
Yeah. So then Halsey tags Maggie in a tweet and says, "Are you an adult or what?" She says, "Yo, who are you? You're acting like a baby. A lot of my fans love your work and that's sick. Grow up." She said, "That's sick as in, it's cool my listeners relate my music to your work. Your outburst is ridiculous." So she's saying that's sick as in, it's really
okay,
cool. Yeah, she's like, it's really cool that fans are seeing this connection between our art and are pointing it out to you, and you're mocking them.
I didn't take it as mocking, really. Like I'm looking at a weird outsider's perspective. It's like, yeah, she's like alluding to her characters. It's such a weird topic because on the one hand, it is important to represent. I don't want to get fucking blasted on the internet for saying these things, but to word them very specifically.
Right.
It is important to represent certain things that everyone goes through in their life when they're young, and it's also important to know when to shut the fuck up about some things that people go through and wait till they're older to talk about it.
Exactly.
And it's perfectly fine for an adult to allude to things, but don't write out scenes, please.
Yes. Yeah.
And this happens in anime a lot, where the culture is different in Japan. I get it.
Right.
But also a lot of perverts do a lot of pervert stuff. It happens.
Yeah. That's been a big discussion in book Twitter discourse.
It's actually also in D&D production discourse.
Really?
One of my favorite series, Dimension 20. They have a series called Fantasy High, where all the players, it's like their flagship D&D thing. So Fantasy High is all the actors playing teenage characters. And there's some like romantic context, and that's fine. You can like roleplay like young romance. There are also some scenes where it's played as a joke at first, where it's like one of the young female characters is like, "Hey, this adult is hitting on me. Stop doing that."
Right.
And the adult character's not doing it, but the actor who does it continues to like play into like, "Oh, my character's actually just like constantly wants to be in relationships with adults," and that's where things get really weird for it. Because I mean, it's something that happens in real life, but you don't want to portray it, and I don't think it overall detracts from the quality of Fantasy High.
Right.
It's something that you have to like look at and be like, okay, why is this weird?
Right.
And like the person who played it is like, I get where they're coming from in portraying like a young girl who has a fixation on older men. You know what I mean? I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
I don't think she had to get into it as much as she did, but she did, and it's it's out there, and now it's a discussion to be had.
Yeah, it's important to have those conversations and understand where the line needs to be drawn. Cool.
We wrapped up a thought. That's insane.
I know. Maybe for the first time ever.
The first time and probably the last time in the series.
Yeah, don't get used to it, folks. So the Twitter exchange continues. Maggie says, "I get that I'm being told to grow up and chill. I'm gonna ask for it again. Some goddamn understanding and a few less hand jobs in my inbox." So basically, she's implying that the song is about hand jobs, and she's upset that people are taking that song and applying it to an innocent scene in her
Okay,
novel.
I get it. I get where she's coming from.
Yeah.
I don't think she has to say it the way she did, but I would be upset like if characters that I had we talk about this with a character idea for our new series that we don't want to be responsible for putting some things out into the world.
Yeah.
And I get that, and I would be very upset if I had seen like if we went through with the character and played them out, and then the inevitable happens on the internet. It would be very frustrating to know that, and that's why we curtailed it in the first place. But also, it's going to happen with characters, regardless of what we do.
Right.
People are going to be weirdos on the internet. It happens.
Mm-hmm.
I would not react this way. I don't think I might get heated. Who knows? I have a habit of like if I want to stop an argument, I will like end it as harshly and quickly as possible, because like it's the
Right.
easiest way to do it sometimes.
Yeah.
So I get it. I get where she's coming from.
I understand having to be careful and really aware of how you're reacting with teen fans online when you're an adult. And it can get, there is a hot debate about like sexual content in young adult novels and what is too far and what is appropriate, especially when an adult is writing it and teens are consuming it. So for somebody to imply that, she's writing something inappropriate in her novels when she's not, that could be frustrating. But you also have to remember, I think, that, other celebrities on the internet, even if they're bigger than you, are still people, and when you tag them, they're able to see it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So Halsey responds, hand jobs, it's literally about sitting in a car, being too nervous to confess love to someone. But I let people interpret it.
That is an important thing too. Is like you can set up in the story that you can have characters have sex without ever even saying they have sex
Yeah.
very easily, and like I think it's safe to assume a lot of things when you read a story. It's like, all right, I'm going to apply my life experiences to this, and if your life
Right.
experiences were like being young and doing stuff that you shouldn't have been doing, then you're going to apply those things. It's just
Yeah.
how it is.
Yeah, and if something is written appropriately by an adult, and then a teen reads that and applies their own life experiences to that, that's fine.
Yeah, we used to run into issues where you start like making assumptions of how other people make assumptions about how you're making
Yes.
assumptions. That's where we're getting into the weird spots.
Yeah, when people are like, "Oh, this scene that was about romantic tension was actually about hand jobs." It's like, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's not apply our own logic to somebody else's writing.
She's the one with hand jobs on the brain. Like at that point,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's I get into the hand job zone too, but I get it. I understand. I go to that little part of my brain too. I get it. You don't have to drag everybody else there with you.
I took a sip of soda right as you said I get into the hand job zone too. I
I'm
almost
sorry.
choked. It's okay. It's not your
That's
fault.
I just want to set precedent for people that don't know that people that don't. Okay, this is a little side thing for just to know
Uh-huh.
me as a content creator a little better.
Mhm.
For a while, when I was streaming on Twitch, I was the most wholesome Twitch streamer alive, and that's a fucking lie. And I put it on there as like a ironic thing because I would talk about all sorts of stupid shit while I was
Uh-huh.
streaming, and my old roommates would get mad at me like, "Oh, you pretend like you're such a wholesome person, but you say all this stuff." Like, yeah, that's the joke. That's that. It's like the whole joke is that I don't understand what being wholesome is. And that's part of the like this Twitch personality. And I was never like gross or weird about it. We just
Yeah.
like I would just talk about like whatever was on my mind. And sometimes we go to like talk about sex. I'm an adult. I talk about sex stuff. My stream was always marketed or not marketed. It was limited to 18 and plus. So like if somebody younger got into it, it'd be their fault. Like
Right.
there are placeholders, stuff in place to keep young viewers from my content.
Exactly.
Um,
It's not your job to police every child on the
Yes.
internet when you've put up every warning that it's
Yep.
not for them.
And there's times where I had to ban young viewers, and because they'd come and be like,
Yeah,
"Oh, I'm actually 13." I'm like, "No, you're not. Get out of here. It's
yeah.
banned.
Don't
See ya."
don't say that.
Yeah.
That's funny because I'm sort of maybe not the opposite, but uh, I'm 5'3", sort of a awkward, soft-spoken person in person,
Hmm.
and I did that thing where there was a post that was like, put this on your timeline and have people tell you how intimidating they think you are from a scale of 1 to 10.
Oh
And
yeah.
all of my replies were 1. Like, I'm the least intimidating person on the planet to people. But deep down, I am a cranky, annoyed person who also really loves like evil characters.
Yeah.
It's like, you guys think I'm this little cinnamon roll, but I'm a villain fucker.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not, despite my awkwardness and cinnamon roll exterior, inside it's slightly less fluffy, but still, I don't know, I guess somewhat wholesome.
There's a little spicier on the inside. I get it.
Yeah, I'm a cinnamon roll with like a single jalapeno in the center.
Yeah, and that's going back to first off, I responded on that Facebook post and said you were a 10 because all women scare me.
That's true. You were like the one person who didn't put 1.
Yeah, and then also it's like being a dungeon master and like having our first campaign that we're doing is like a practice run is very like wholesome and fun and like anime, and like we get into like some darker stuff in the recent stuff we did, but even that like ended on like a good note and
Yeah.
stuff was served. I take a lot of inspiration from, again, Dimension 20's Brendan Lee Mulligan, and College Humor is Brendan Lee Mulligan. He's a very funny person. I look up to him a lot, and he has a little thing where he talks about some of his time DMing, and he is like, "Oh, my characters were having a lot of fun, and what was the story? They went to meet this witch in the woods, and they loved her, and she's super nice." And like the campaign was going well, so I took offense to that. And they came back to town, and the witch was hanging in the middle of the town. And it's like that's the kind of DM I actually am. So I'm excited to see in the continuation here in our new series how dark I'm going to get and how much whiplash all the other players are going to get.
Yes.
And it's going to be a lot of fun. And that's like one of my favorite things to do. Like is to subvert expectation as a creative content maker. And that's where it's like. For a little bit, my Twitch stuff was like it was like children's book themed. Like it didn't work out very long because like I couldn't get the artist that did it to actually work with me on anything, and like I liked the stuff that she made, but like she just gave up on it after she was done making the initial stuff and went on to do other stuff. I was like, this isn't really what I wanted, and I tried to explain it to her and blah blah blah. But I ended up dodging that or dumping that stuff and moving on to doing my own thing. But it's that whiplash of which makes comedy so good, where you subvert expectation to make something funny or terrifying, and it can go either way.
And that's my favorite type of storytelling.
It's good, very good, and that's kind of like where this like whole beginning has already taken me. It's like I thought so many different things just going through the story, and then the author just got real mad.
Yeah, and it keeps going. Maggie says, clearly you're in for a fight. I'm not in for a fight. I'm not going to call you names or escalate. And Halsey says, no, you took the opportunity to tell my listeners that my song was about handjobs. Quote, a different kind of stick shift. She says, let me figure out which way I'm reading this. The way Twitter used to be, it was like in the wrong order.
Yeah, Twitter's kind of a weird layout just in general.
Yeah.
Definitely something that was designed for like, here's a quick thought I had and that's it.
Yep. I'll just read it in this order and see if it makes sense. Halsey then says, this whole thing is because my fans told me she's having a temper tantrum because they relate Drive to her book. Are we adults? She says, the whole point of this is that I agree people have freedom to interpret, and she's telling her fans they can't. Maggie Steve Otter, you obviously escalated when you went on a tweet binge mocking me, and my fans said you made them feel stupid, simply defending. Art is open for interpretation. If someone ever tells you you're stupid for how you relate to art, mine or anyone else's, fuck 'em. And then it ends with it ends with Maggie saying, I used Halsey as a long-running joke on my Twitter because I thought she'd never see it. It was like joking about, I don't know, Elvis. And Halsey responds, quote, I advocate for celebrities to be seen as people. And then a separate quote, I used Halsey as a long-running joke on Twitter because I didn't think she'd see.
Jeez. Yeah, that's... Halsey wins. I don't know what else to say about that, really.
Yeah, that's the common consensus from people.
That just Maggie got a little toasted on that one, and I hope Maggie's kind of taken things in stride and grown from the exchange. But damn, she got him.
Yeah, she got roasted. So that's a big, there'll be tweets that are like, what's your favorite crazy young adult Twitter community drama? And somebody always jumps in and says Maggie Stiefvater versus Halsey. It's like the convergence of two very different fandoms, I guess, and one like pretty famous celebrity versus somebody who's kind of just a celebrity in their own circle. It's just very interesting, and the exchange was hilarious.
This is a wild ride, and I'm just like, I'm slightly reading ahead because I know we're moving on to the next thing now. Mm-hmm. And this is very interesting, knowing a bit about how... Have you ever heard the term industry plant?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm actually drafting another episode about an industry plant.
Is that the TikTok ladies?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I can't remember the name of the obviously not queer band.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can't remember their name either, but
like Pussy Riot, maybe? No, that doesn't sound.
No, that's a real band.
That's a real band. Okay, yeah.
I have it written down. Hold on, because it's just gonna drive me crazy if I can't.
Yeah, if we can't, we'll be lost in that thought forever.
The Tramp Stamps.
Tramp Stamps, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just love the name Pussy Riot. It's a good band name.
Yeah, it is a really good name.
Tramp Stamps is a good name too. They just fucked it up by being bad at what they do.
Yeah, they ruined it.
All right. So talking one industry plant to the next, and
yes,
into the past of industry plants, I guess. Let's start talking about this next one.
So this next one is about a book that made it onto the New York Times bestseller list in 2017.
Which is a whole thing on its own. It's not New York Times bestseller list is a whole thing.
Mm-hmm. If you could read this quote that I have here, this is the synopsis for the novel.
Will you highlight it real quick?
Yeah.
Oh, this one I'm looking at. Okay, yeah, that's what I was looking at. All right. Zaide Holder has always been a free-spirited young woman. From a long dynasty of tarot card readers, fortune tellers, and practitioners of magic, with a K. Growing up in a small town and never quite fitting in, Zaide is determined to forge her own path. Okay, that's a young adult tagline. I get it.
Yeah. Doesn't really tell you much about what the book is going to contain, but...
No, it's concise. It tells you what it needs to tell you.
Even more interesting, I think, is the author biography for the person who wrote this book. It's a little long, but I think it's worth reading all of it. It says, I think it's Lonnie, so that's how I'm going to pronounce it. Lonnie Sarum basically grew up in the entertainment industry. She began acting at age 3 and continued to act and perform through her early years. Lonnie began writing scripts when she was 11. Over the years, she has become a jack of all trades in the entertainment business. She became a rock and roll-y G-word.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know what the G-word was at first, and that's just not good. That's bad.
So, strike one, we've got a slur in her biography. Became a G-word at 15 and started touring with bands and working on festivals. She's toured with everyone from Ryan Adams to Gnarls Barkley. Strike two, who is gonna brag about touring with those two.
I don't know. Gnarls Barkley, I like that one song they did, but
Yeah, it's like these are
I
like
don't know anything else about them. Also, she's how old is she? 15, and she's going around with grown men.
yeah.
I don't like that. And our entertainment industry is kind of fucked up.
Mhm.
Without getting into all the conspiracy theory stuff, it's just knowing like that it is a fucked up system with fucked up people in it.
Yeah.
So that's like 3 red flags right in that sentence.
Uh-huh. She also became one of the youngest female managers in the business and managed bands like the Plain White T's, 100 Monkeys, and Blues Traveler. Again, not the biggest bands, not
Yeah,
the most famous bands I've ever heard
Plain White
of.
Tees is the only one I know of. And I've
Same.
heard of Blues Traveler, but I don't
Yeah.
know them off the top
I'm
of my
not
head.
familiar.
I
Just heard of them.
now that I've looked her up, I know who this person is.
Really?
Yeah, I've seen her. I don't know like anything specific about her,
Okay.
but I recognize her.
Cool. Lonnie has appeared in films like Mall Cop 2,
Uh-huh.
Jason Bourne, and Trailer Park Shark. Again, only heard of one of them, unless that's Paul Blart Mall Cop 2,
It is, yeah,
which
Mall Cop 2. Yeah, yeah, it absolutely is.
I would
There's no other
never
Mall Cop movies. I refuse to accept any other ones.
I would never brag about being in Paul Blart 2.
You know,
Maybe if I was in Paul Blart 1, but even then.
Yeah, that it's a weird pull. Jason Bourne definitely very cool. Don't know what Trailer Park Shark
Yeah.
is. You know what though? Based off the title, I'd probably watch it.
Yeah, that's probably the coolest one on that list. Handbook for Mortals is a debut novel of a series of books, which are also being made into feature films. You can follow Lonnie on her social networks to keep up with her many adventures, and look out for her at Wizard World Comic Con near you.
Just quickly, Trailer Park Shark A looks like a pretty funny movie, and B she is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 19. She's 20th listed in the actors
Wow.
lineup, and it's not alphabetical. So if
Oh
that tells you
boy.
anything,
Yeah. So she's like, I was an extra on the set of this movie for 2 seconds,
yeah,
but I'm gonna
she
put it in the bio for my novel.
that's just on IMDb. It says cast and credits order complete awaiting verification. So she may not have been an extra. She may have been like a decently involved character,
Possibly, yeah.
but it's giving us more information on the fact that she's like extras and all that. I mean, I just said she's not extra, but whatever. She's
Yeah.
minor characters in all these movies, but somehow was on the New York Times bestseller list with assumingly her first publishing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to sort of set the scene for the time that this hit the New York Times bestseller list. Angie Thomas, the author of The Hate U Give, at this point, has been on the bestseller list for like, I think 100 weeks, maybe more. And she's still on the list. Handbook for Mortals didn't knock her off. But it may have knocked her from the first spot. And The Hate U Give, I think, is still on the bestseller list right now.
I don't know
And
what
there was
that
a
is.
movie about it. It's a very popular young adult book about the very important topic of police violence and racism.
Okay. I have seen parts of this, yes.
Yeah. I also want to point out, I think it's a little strange that her author biography is longer than her book synopsis.
On the one hand, yeah, that is weird. But I mean, you want to kind of like, if you don't have much to go off of the synopsis, you want to be like, I'm a cool author, and
Yeah.
here's my young adult book, and I was a young adult touring with a bunch of bands, so I know what being cool is. Here you go,
Mhm.
young adults.
And it
I
sort of makes sense when you know that her book is pretty much based on her own life. Like, her main character is a self-insert.
Yeah. Hey, I used to give authors hard times for that, but also it's just fun. It's fun to do. It's
Yeah.
like, it's fun to live out a little fantasy in that, and like here you go, here I am in this weird world.
Right, I'm not gonna hate anybody just based on that one fact.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um I will criticize people for doing some of the things that we're about to talk about, though.
Yeah.
So this started as a screenplay. As you can tell from her bio, she's very into film and acting. So she wrote this as a screenplay.
That's not strange for the publishing process.
Yeah.
So far, so good.
Yeah. So then she meets Thomas Ian Nicholas. He was in the American Pie movie, maybe more than one. I don't know. I haven't seen that since I was like 15.
He's in a couple of those, yeah.
Okay. So she met Thomas Ian Nicholas from the American Pie films and promised him a role and producer credit if he helped her get the movie made. And he was super interested in getting this movie made. When you read like interviews from him though, he doesn't really mention much about the screenplay. He mostly talks about how he wants to be in a film and produce a movie. And then the author kind of pointed out like, "Oh, well, you liked my plot twists too." And he was like, "Yeah."
That's the ultimate dismissal. It's like, Jesus. He's like, I get where he's come from. It's like, I have an in. I don't begrudge him at all at this point.
Yeah.
It's like, here's a money dispenser that's gonna help me get like a foot in the door for producing stuff.
Mm-hmm. So the screenplay and the book take place in Vegas. And so the character in the book meets Carrot Top.
Uh-huh.
And so allegedly, the author promised Carrot Top a role in the movie as well, and so she had to put him into the book.
You know what? That's cool. I like that. That's not like a weird thing, honestly, to me. That's kind of like if it's taking place in an alternate reality or a close to our reality kind of story. I would appreciate that, unless it's like too much. It's just kind of funny to me that it's Carrot Top.
It's really funny how, like, I don't know, maybe you could call them D-list celebrities keep coming up in this story.
Uh-huh.
Like, anything that she can do to be associated with any kind of fame, it seems like she's gonna do it.
That's where it's getting weirder and weirder, because like I want to know who she's related to. That would allow her to travel with bands at 15. I hope the parents went with her, but probably didn't.
Who knows?
Who knows? I don't want to make too many assumptions about this person.
Yeah.
But it's very strange. So this is the weird stuff. Like the Snape wives were like normal weird. This is extra weird.
Yeah. She did, I believe, grow up in Vegas, and from what I've heard from people who grew up in Vegas, this is pretty on brand.
Yeah, it makes knowing the American systems in place there. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Both in Hollywood and Los Angeles and Vegas and all the like big cities. I get it.
Yeah. So I think somebody approached her and suggested that she turn her screenplay into a book, because so many movies and TV shows are adaptations of best-selling books. So what she did was she published this book. She just like, a common theme in this story with her is just like approaching people and asking for things and then getting them. Like, I don't know if she's the most charismatic person to ever exist or if she's just lucky. I don't know what's going on there, but a lot of things fall into place for her.
I have spoiled this a little bit for myself by looking up Handbook for Mortals and scrolling down and seeing people also search for Onision's terrible books.
Oh no.
So, okay, I kind of have like terrible vibes from all of this now.
Uh-huh. So, the way that she sells this book is she goes around to a bunch of Comic Cons with Thomas Ian Nicholas. They didn't even have copies of the book yet, but he's just selling like a promise to send a copy of the book to people, and I guess he's saying that he'll sign it too. And they claim that they sold thousands of copies of the book without even having it physically through Comic-Con and because this semi-famous person was peddling them. I don't know if you've been to any conventions or specifically Comic Cons, because when you hear Comic Con, you think of the big, like, New York Comic
Yeah.
Con with a bunch of people. Um, but I've worked quite a few Comic Cons. You basically, I don't really know how it works, but you can get the rights to put on a Comic Con, and most of them are very small.
Yeah,
Uh,
I've never been to a Comic Con, but I've been to actually like only one convention where I stayed for more than a couple hours.
mhm.
And that's one that happens down in Detroit that I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but it's very fun. It was very cool.
I love cons.
Uh, but it's I know that some of them are like we had one in our town that was like 4 tables, and it wasn't a Comic
Hmm.
Con. It was just really sad.
Yeah,
Um, that's just I get where this is going. I know.
yeah. Like at these Comic Cons, you have celebrities ranging from, like, the most famous person I've seen at a Comic Con was David Tennant. I didn't get to meet him, but I like saw him across the room. Um, and then you have people who are, and I don't want to like shit on them and say, they're not famous, but they're more like people that you recognize only if you're a fan of their work. Um, like production people or people who haven't been in anything in a long time and they're just from this like cult classic, and people are like, oh, I'm gonna meet that guy from the Goonies. Those are the types of people that you can see at some of these Comic Cons.
Yeah, for sure.
So for them to insinuate that they sold thousands of copies just because the actor from American Pie was selling them, I find that extremely hard to believe. Just from my own um, experience being at these smaller Comic Cons, and even at like New York Comic Con, like Neil Gaiman has gone to these conventions and doesn't sell thousands of
No,
books.
most people don't go to buy books because
Yeah,
it's like why would you? You order them off Amazon or go to the bookstore. That's where you go to buy
yeah,
books. You go to Comic Con to meet people and like buy overpriced stuff that's not books.
right. And if you're gonna meet an author, usually you already have their book and you just bring it for them to
Exactly.
sign. And that's why they charge money for signatures, because they know, I'm not gonna sell that many books, but if I charge for signatures, people are gonna have stuff for me to sign. Um, so then, of course, the New York Times doesn't take convention sales into account. Um, so, but she wanted her sales to count towards the bestseller list. So what they did was call up bookstores and place bulk orders uh, for the novel, since they didn't have the physical copies yet, and they were going to ship them to the people who already bought them.
Okay, so they basically scammed like ghost orders.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, that's exactly where I thought it was going, and like that's a big problem with like a lot of things, like especially on the New York Times list. That this isn't like a this is the first time it happened sort of thing. Happens all the time.
yeah. This is just like the first time that it's been a book that nobody's heard of, because
Hmm.
this hit the New York Times list, and everybody on book Twitter was like, has anybody heard of this? Has anybody read this? And everybody was like, no. Usually, what publishing companies do is they know that social media sells books, and so they send advanced reader copies to known book bloggers to get them to help sell the book before it comes out. And nobody had gotten any advanced copies of Handbook for Mortals, and again, nobody had heard of it.
Yeah,
Um,
that's something super simple that even like the author can do in their spare time too. It's like word of mouth is the best form of advertising. That's why we see more and more these days. And I mean, it's always been this way too with advertising stuff.
yeah.
That you have big name actors. talking about products. You don't have like just some random person like, hey, I love this Tempur-Pedic bed.
Right.
I don't know any actors who have done Tempur-Pedic ads, but like that's just the first like product I could think of because I was looking at new beds earlier. Um, and it's always like word of mouth is the best way of selling things, and something we have to do at the end of these episodes is start saying, "Hey, recommend the show to friends." So hopefully we start remembering that. But it's falsifying sale records is a very fast and easy way to be outed as an industry plant like this.
Mm-hmm. And what this did generate a lot of buzz for the book after it hit the bestseller list by, fraudulently. But people like I stumbling over my words. A YouTuber that I watch who focuses on book content bought the book just to read it and see what it was all about and vlogged the experience of reading it. And he was like, "This book is horrible. This is awful. This is almost unreadable." So not only did she pretty much fraudulently make it to the top of the bestseller list, it was with a book that didn't deserve that spot. Especially when you think about the hate you give this amazing book about this super important topic being on that list at the same time, and maybe even being like docked a spot because of this awful book that is basically a publicity stunt so that she can get a movie made from it.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah.
That's like the worst thing I've heard. Like, we've covered some weird stuff. This is just like I said, I spoiled it by seeing that it's like looked up with Onision's terrible books, which
Yeah.
I've heard reviews on those because I hate Onision so much.
Same.
So I literally listened to like a review of each of his books, and they were super terrible. And
Yeah.
the fact that I saw that this is lumped in with those, like, oh no, I immediately knew that things were gonna get fucking rowdy with how bad this went.
Yeah.
That's really upsetting to me. I hate people that do this kind of stuff.
And she's been interviewed. There's a pretty good article that I'll link where she was interviewed about this, and she doesn't see that what she did was wrong, and the only thing she said about it was like, "Oh yeah, maybe next time I do this, I'll send out ARCs to book bloggers, but yeah, I might do this again for the sequel."
That's shitty. Like, that's super shitty. I hate that. I hate that. This person's very bad. This is a bad person.
Yeah.
We probably won't say that very often about people on the show, but this is just a bad person who's doing bad things.
It's not a nice thing to do at all.
Wow, I'm just mad now.
I know. Well, we're gonna end on a much more light-hearted note.
Yeah, I'm so happy that I only read the title of this next part.
Good. So this next segment is going to be about Dick Soapgate, as it has been dubbed by Twitter. How does one define Dick Soapgate?
Is it soap specifically for washing penises and balls? Or is it the other interpretation where it is in the shape of a dick?
It is the latter.
Okay, that's okay. The first is good. Men need to wash their dick and balls. Please do it. So many don't. Please do it.
We're begging you. Please do that.
Getting dick-shaped soap can be fun and funny.
Uh-huh.
It can be.
It can be. Things shaped like dicks can be fun and funny. When I went to Italy in high school, I saw so many dicks everywhere. Italians must just think dicks are hilarious because there was dick-shaped pasta. They were selling dick candles, dick sculptures, aprons that had dicks on the front. It was a good time.
Yeah, I mean, that's the things, like some cultures can have desexualized the penis, which is cool and good to do.
Yeah.
And it's fine to do that. And the main thing is seeing the dick consensually.
Yes. That's very important.
That's the most important part. And most of the stores, like, hey, we got dicks in the store. You know, you're not walking up like, whoa, there's a lot of dicks here. I didn't see
oh my god,
coming in advance. Most of them are like, hey, this is like a dick store. You know, deal with it.
Yeah. So this. How do I even start with Dick Soapgate? Have you heard of Sarah J. Maas or A Court of Thorns and Roses?
I think I've heard of let me look it up. Like with most books, I think I've seen the cover.
Yeah, they sell it in Target.
I've seen the cover and I thought the name was interesting.
Yeah. It was trending recently because they announced that it's getting a TV show, which I don't even want to get into that. This is a highly debated series on book Twitter. You either love Sarah J. Maas or you hate her.
Okay.
Her other young adult fantasy series was one of the first series I read when I was getting back into reading, and I loved it at the time. But that was like 6 years ago, and looking back, I couldn't even finish the series because by the time the newer books were out, I had moved on, and I was like, these are not for me.
I will say very quickly that they've got good reviews on Goodreads.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've read some books that are well reviewed that I didn't like, but I knew that they were like decent books. So I'm assuming that these are well written.
Yeah, they're not terrible.
Maybe not like the best stories, but like she knows what she's doing.
Yeah. Like, I'm not gonna judge anybody for liking them, but her series A Court of Thorns and Roses is a little notorious because it's young adult fantasy, and it kind of draws from the Omegaverse, if you know what that is.
I don't. What is this?
Oh boy. Okay, we'll get more into this in a future episode, but it's a fantasy series about fairies, and in sculpting her fairy culture,
hold on,
she draws...
No, we gotta go back a second.
Okay.
I looked it up. We gotta stop. Stop the presses. Is the Omegaverse all MPreg stuff? Male pregnancy stuff?
Not... No, okay. That doesn't have anything to do with these books.
Okay. Alright, good.
Yeah,
good.
We're not gonna quite get to that in this episode. We will in the future.
Okay, because like I said before, I won't kink shame people. You know, everybody's into their own thing. There are plenty of species where not traditionally, like biologically, what you consider masculine things can get pregnant, like seahorses, whatever. That's beside the point. I just looked up Omegaverse, and it was literally all like, hey, men can get pregnant in this series. Like, oh, well, what does that have to do with anything we were just talking about?
Yeah, okay. So it comes from wolves. And that study about like alpha, beta, and omega wolves, which was proven false.
The false study where like captive wolves went insane. Yeah, I get. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's about kind of applying fake wolf
psychology,
biology, and psychology to adult humans / anthropomorphic people.
Okay.
And so it's clear that Sarah J. Maas pulled a lot of stuff, not everything, but she pulled some inspiration from Omegaverse fanfiction, which is where this originated.
Okay. You know, as an interesting plot device that can be, even though it's a flawed study, that could be something interesting to explore. I don't hate the idea of it. I just hate when people think it's the fact and truth of the world.
Right. And Omegaverse has, like, it went viral on TikTok recently having to do with Ramadan, which we'll have a whole episode about that. Okay. But they've got their own lore, they've got rules, it's fascinating. So in the books, the fairies sort of mate for life, and these aren't like little fairies, these are like the fae.
Okay. Yeah.
So they mate for life. They will like bite their mate to like mark them.
Like actively, like they keep doing it, or is it just like a one-time thing?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I
Either
think it's
way, it's a little weird, but like it's a different culture in the story, whatever. I get it.
yeah, I think it's actively like during romantic activities.
Okay, whatever. That's
Yeah,
a story plot device, whatever.
people do that.
People do it.
Maybe not for the same purposes.
No, well, some definitely, yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
Some definitely. But
So it's not completely unrealistic.
it's not unreal. Yeah, this is just it's still weird, but not bad.
Hmm. It gets a little weird when you think about the fact that this is a young adult series, and the scenes
Yes.
for a young adult series are pretty explicit.
Okay, that's where we're
And
running into some trouble. Yeah.
yeah, so there was a little bit of controversy, and there's been some controversy about this being labeled young adult. And it just has to do with the publishing industry, really, and how they think that young adult is going to sell better than stuff for slightly older people. But she did label her most recent book in the series New Adult. And it got
Excuse me.
kinkier.
What? There's new adults? New
There's
adult just dropped?
It's called New Adult, and it's for like 20 somethings. And there's not that many books in the new adult genre, and most of them are like weirdly sexual and poorly written, and there's a whole hot debate about young adult versus new adult and how a bunch of adult fantasy authors have to age down their characters to be marketable, and it's a whole thing.
I think it's so funny that it's named New Adult, and like
Yeah, New Adult just dropped.
I love that meme. It's so funny to me. Like
Yeah,
the one that made me laugh the most was like someone's like new pizza just dropped, but it was like a burger with pepperoni and cheese on it. I was like, that's
Cyrus's favorite pizza.
That's just
so
nuts.
It's funny that's your example. But yeah, I've given you way too much context, but it's just really interesting to me, and I know too much about it.
This is super interesting to get into that. Let's get back to the dick soap.
Yeah. So now that you know about A Court of Thorns and Roses, there's this subscription box called the Book Boyfriend box, and it has different themes. It usually it usually comes with stuff like bookmarks, throw blankets, candles, keychains,
all nice
merch centered around books and fictional men in books. So this box was featuring the Court and Thorns of Roses series, which again is notorious for being pretty sexual for a young adult series. They did have a disclaimer on their Instagram post about the box that it was not safe for work and it was for 18 plus.
That's important to the context, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little weird to think about, and there's a pretty hot debate about adults reading young adult novels and sexualizing the characters and then making 18 plus content for the teen. I don't know how old they're supposed to be in the book series. I don't know if they're teens or if they're adults, but you get into some murky water.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So the box came with some stuff like not safe for work art. You should look up the picture because it's pretty funny.
So what am I going to look up for this book?
Look up Book Boyfriend box.
NSFW?
A Court of Thorns. Yeah. Maybe throw in A Court of Thorns and Roses.
Yeah. Auto completing for me. Images. Holy shit. Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right.
So it came with that. It came with a fan-written smut novella. And the most notorious item in this box was a purple bar of soap shaped like a dick that had a suction cup on it.
Yeah, I am glad that it's not a giant one. Because that's just false representation, the American average is, on the lower side, it's like 4 to 5 inches.
Right.
Definitely that's okay.
Lower than what people would make you think.
Yeah, and it's also a TikTok thing. We'll get a little sidetracked talking about penises in our podcast about nerd stuff. It's a new TikTok thing where a lot of women are like, hey, you know what, guys? It's some people like small dicks. And it's even calling them small dicks is like me growing up in a society where it's like Yeah, that's small. It's so weird, but it's nice to see people talking about like it's not bad to have a penis that isn't over like 6 inches.
Yeah, I personally have always been put off by the like mega jumbo monster dick
Yeah,
fascination.
exactly. It's
What am I
very
supposed to do with
strange,
all that?
and it was always like I'm not gonna air too much on this, but it was always like weird for me because like I don't look like that, so I don't like this. It's not the content I want to consume on the
Yeah,
internet, so it's
yeah,
it's it's off-putting. Anyways, let's talk about this dick soap.
yeah.
So it had a suction cup on it, so I guess
Uh
you
huh.
could. Why? Why does I know why it would have a suction cup on it. I've been on the internet. I get it.
Yeah, and
Um,
like
but why
for
does
soap,
this soap
like
specifically? That doesn't make any sense.
you're not really supposed to put that there, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
And like I'm pretty sure they had to have a disclaimer that was like
Absolutely, like
this soap
you
is
get
for external use
would absolutely get
only.
your ass sued right off. It's not safe. I don't have a vagina, so I can't speak to the maintenance and upkeep that actually goes into it. But I know like vaguely that you're not supposed to use soaps on it in general. I
Yeah,
technically I'm not supposed to use soaps on my bits either unless it's like specifically neutral
right.
because sometimes it can cause damage, and I've had chemical burns in the region before because I used like
Oof.
aggressive soaps. It's not
Ugh.
fun, and it's never like,
Yeah.
thankfully it's always been like mild, but like mild in the bad zone is too bad. It's way too
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah, you definitely like I'm gonna come out and say it. You don't want to fuck soap. Twitter was insane on this day. A pretty popular book blogger got the book boyfriend box
Uh-huh.
and like unboxed it in a series of tweets and was everybody was just going insane. Somebody tweeted in all caps like don't fuck the dick soap. Um
That makes sense. It's good for people to know. Good for people to be active and like, hey, please don't get out. I'm on such a weird like fence in this because I don't know the series. I don't know if they're
mhm.
teens or kids or what the fuck's going on. If they're presented as children, then it's a problem. I think it's funny. Like
Yeah.
it's a funny box,
Yeah,
but
and that was the vibe mostly. Like, a couple people were like, this is a young adult series, what are you doing? But at the same time, it was just so absurd, and also they put warnings on it. We could get into how it's maybe inappropriate to even sexualize this series, but I don't even know. I don't know enough about it to have an opinion.
yeah,
But it is hilarious to me. And also, there was a good point in brought up that you should not be selling fan fiction. I don't know if that's even legal.
that is a weird area because it covers like the same like, is this transformative enough to be like internet content like what is it, not sarcasm, um but it kind of has the same context of sarcasm where you present something in a different light to make it like parody laws.
Yeah.
Is it transformative enough to be a parody law? And like, I mean, that there's like weird Pokemon porn where the actresses in it get dressed up like Pikachu's.
Yeah.
Like,
That's cursed. I've
it's
seen
cursed
images of
content,
that.
and like they know that they make it specifically because they know it's cursed, and it's like kind of funny to them. And it's
Yeah.
like, all the power to them. From what I've heard, they're like,
Right.
besides being weird, they're a good company.
Yeah.
But that's also might be me being completely wrong. Um, Selling fan fictions, it has like, to me it has to be transformative enough. And I guess if you write a porn novella about a series, as long as it's not about young characters, good for
Mhm.
you. You can sell it. I love Chuck Tingle.
Oh yeah.
He writes a bunch of really like funny stuff, but if you actually like read the books, they're super horny and actual, like they are sex books.
Yeah.
um but like all the titles are so funny.
Yeah, I think I follow him on Twitter.
Um,
But yeah, that was Dick Soapgate. It's still brought up like once a month, even years later.
Very funny to me. I appreciate this. It's a good palate cleanser from the fucking the bad stuff that we read.
Yeah, yeah. It's a good note to end on.
That made me angrier than anything else we've talked about, just because it's like, as a not as like a I'm not a popular creative. I've like just under 1,000 followers on Twitter, kind of thing going on. Like more than I
Nice.
ever thought I would have, but less than makes me popular. Um, it just makes me mad that people game the system like that and then don't have any
Mm-hmm.
remorse about it.
Yeah, and don't have any talent, frankly, to
Yeah,
back up.
that's also it. Yeah, and
Hmm.
because like on the one hand, like if you were like a good author and you just weren't getting published, and then you pulled like the hey, I tricked the system, and here's my good book, and people are like, oh, here's a good book. That's completely different than being like a bad writer. And just like
Right.
I need to game the system so that I can get notoriety, so I can make some money.
Exactly.
All right, now to make myself unmad again from going back and visiting the mad stuff. I'm gonna go to
Think
our
about the dick soap
think of the dick
again.
soap, and
Look at a picture of
we're
it.
going to filler words again. Good friend of
Yes.
the show, Doctor Not a Doctor Phil. We're gonna continue the baby gate scandal. That sounds worse than it is. It's young Phil and his baby with a
Uh-huh.
mustache. The baby
Young
doesn't have a
Phil.
mustache. The young Phil does. Um, this first comment on this next one you sent me was, "Can you please, for the 6.23 to the 10th power 23 times, I think that's how you read that. I don't do math.
Me neither.
Help me locate my biological egg donor. UN Troy Dunn the locator. I don't know who that is. You say you read every comment. I hope this finds you, McGraw." Which the rest of that's like kind of like goofy. Um, but the last part, I hope this finds you, McGraw, just comes off as so aggressive, and I love
That's
it.
so scary. I don't think I would feel the need to. First of all, that person, if they're by some chance listening to this, I don't think Dr. Phil is your best bet for finding that person.
I think a
Um,
good bet. I think a good like start maybe.
yeah,
But I don't know. I don't actually watch Dr. Phil. I don't know anything about the guy. I know.
he.
Last thing I know was Bad Bobby, Bad Baby. I don't know the fuck you pronounce her
Oh,
name.
yeah, Bad
That
Baby.
whole thing.
Uh
Uh,
huh.
and then the throw open the door. I'll throw rocks through your window sound clip. That's all I know about Dr. Phil currently.
Oh,
Um, who's the doctor by the good-looking woman? He looks confused, like I did right after the birth of our first son. I don't know what that means.
why were you confused?
And who? Our first son? Dr. Phil had a son with this person? I have no idea.
Huh.
Just very
Was there some
confusing.
Omegaverse going on?
There might be. And the last one's just like a really like sweet actual comment, which we don't read on filler words yet, but I'll read it because it's just funny to me. Awesome, and never forget, Dr. Phil, that being a great husband allows us to do our jobs. You and your sons are all amazing. Wishing you the best, hoping to meet you one day. Love, Colleen and Hennessy. There's a
How
lot to
sweet.
unpack of that.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
No.
Being a great husband, I guess, is like the patriarchal look at like the husband provides for the family, so the women can stay at home and be mothers. Which
Hmm.
it's we won't get into the stuff about that. It's there's pros and cons to a lot of systems that are in place.
Yes.
A lot more cons these days, especially when you talk about the
Absolutely.
patriarchy. But like, if that's how you want to live your life, you can do it. Just don't like make fun of other
Hmm.
people that don't. Whatever.
Exactly.
I just don't know what this person's talking about. I have no context.
It's a little incoherent.
But thank you so much for listening. Sorry about getting mad about a person doing bad stuff, but it's gonna happen every once in a while. Um,
Sorry about making you guys aware of Dick Soapgate, but if I had to suffer through it, you do too.
yeah, that is excellent. A great apology from both of us, if I do say so myself.
Yep.
Thank you again to Midnight Laboratory, Mr. Chris Spectrum, for the music intro and outro. It's cut from the song that he made for me 5 years ago. It's called Star Lightning. The only way you can get it is by asking me directly, which is really like too much power for me to
Ooh,
have. Um,
we got a
it's a,
premium offering
it's
here.
extremely exclusive. I charge $100 for a listen. Uh, Thank you to Acast for having us on Acast. I don't know if they have very much. I mean, they could like remove us if they really wanted to after Dick Soapgate, but I don't know.
Yeah,
They have
thank.
Dungeons and Daddies, which is my favorite Acast production. So
Yeah,
I can't really see us getting removed for talking about Dick Soap.
we can
Um,
talk about Dick Soap.
Thank you to Fern for presenting this terrible information to me today.
Thank you, Toby, for suffering through this information for my own personal enjoyment.
Thank you, Sue Burke, for writing a book about a cool plant. I love it.
Yeah.
Definitely linking that in the thing.
Thank you. Thank you, Halsey, for roasting Maggie Seawater on Twitter publicly so that I
Yes.
could giggle about it.
That was a good one. And thank you, listener, for joining us. If you like this and you know somebody who has dick-based soap, either shaped or for dicks, please share this podcast with them. Word of mouth is the best form of advertising, as we talk about in this one. And going in the future, we'll try to remind everyone to share our shows with them, with a friend, with a mother, father. It doesn't matter. Just, well, maybe not mother or father on this episode, but the other ones.
If you have a cool mom.
Yeah, cool moms like dick soap. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Thanks.
See you
Tune
around.
in next time for some more chaos.
See you later.
Bye.